You're listening to XSGaming Podcast, a podcast for gamers by gamers, with your hosts Xander Skullion and James Gruesome, bringing you something old, something new, and a little bit of nostalgia too.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever time you guys are checking us out, and welcome back to another episode of XSGaming Podcast. We're recording this on the 1st of July. It's hard to believe that 2018 is halfway over. I'm your host, Xander Skullion, and join with me as my wonderful co-host, Mr. James Gruesome. What's up, James?
Break out your snakes and sparklers, everyone, because it's that time of year for all the fireworks in the sky and the hot dogs and hamburgers and all that good crap. So I hope you all are having a good weekend or a holiday if you took the week off or you just have a day off or it's Sunday, maybe you're off today. Whatever it is, I hope it bodes you well.
Indeed, indeed. Now, James, do you do anything special for 4th of July?
No. I don't do shit. A couple of years ago, sometimes we'd get up with our neighbors. A lot of people shoot off fireworks in my neighborhood, which I know me and you sometimes are not the biggest fans of all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And, we don't wish to damper anybody's fun. I understand it's usually a couple days a year if it's on the weekend. 4th of July being on a Wednesday this week might cut down on some of the Saturday activity. Some people in my neighborhood started shooting off on Friday already, and, of course, it's just loud things. I didn't see any pretty fireworks, which I really enjoy, like the big, beautiful ones, but when it's just loud, it's kind of irritating. Everybody's shooting them off, and, it's just, a lot of animals. That's another little note, too. Usually the 5th of July is one of the days where the most animals end up in shelters, which is due to them sometimes being, running off, scared of the fireworks getting out. So that's one thing. If you have animals and you're shooting off fireworks, just be careful. Be in mind of them, too. Still, have fun, but just watch out for your pets for sure. But other than that, too, it's all usually really hot, and I try to stay inside. So I'm just kind of an old man bummer, and I'm okay with that,
Yeah, I'm the same way. When it comes to fireworks, I feel like the ones that aren't like the big, beautiful ones like you were mentioning, I feel like those kind of fireworks are fun for the people that are actually shooting them, but they're not fun for everyone else because they're just loud. And I don't really mind the fireworks as long as it's not like, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning because, I got work the next day. I live with 2 small nephews. One of them can sleep through anything. The other one, like if you step on the wrong piece of paper in the other room, he like wakes up screaming. So it's always kind of hectic with that. But other than that, though, I actually live closer to downtown Wilmington, so I plan on maybe going down to the lake and looking over to Cape Fear River and seeing some of the fireworks. I don't know if they're going to shoot them today, if they're going to shoot them actually on the 4th of July. If they shoot them today, I'll be at work, so I won't even see it.
Yeah, I imagine you will get some celebration along the weekend, like I said, because it just does fall on a weird day. 4th of July is quite random. Like I have Wednesday off this week, which is kind of cool. I usually like to take off in the middle of the week anyway, once in a while. But I'm sure there'll be a lot more that day, but you will get that extension at times, too, of the weekend through Wednesday and maybe even going into the weekend after that. Hopefully not, like we're saying, have fun, but, be as mindful of your neighbors and just other people as possible while still having a good time.
Indeed, indeed. Now, getting into some of the gaming news, not a whole lot has happened. It's been kind of a quiet week. Now, there's been some gaming news, but not enough that I'm like, we need to talk about this. The only things that I've been really wanting to talk about, of course, is as of now, Toys R Us is closed. It's no longer a thing. We were covering this story when it was first being talked about that they were closing a couple of stores down, and we were like, this doesn't look good. And I even mentioned when I went to my local Toys R Us, and I went in there and I saw that they just weren't updating anything. I was like, this is not a good sign at all. Well, it's been inevitable. Toys R Us is no longer around. So what are some really big memories, James, that you have with Toys R Us?
Mine seem to be going back to a young age. I kind of remember when it seemed to have first opened up, because from some of the first years of my life, I don't really remember having one. We had the KB. a very big department store era for me growing up in the 80s. I was born in 78. Kmart, which is another dwindling one. Most of those are closing around now too. Kind of seeing a decline of the department store, but we had Rose's, Kmart.
Oh yeah, we still have Rose's.
Rose's is still going, and it was considered a little bit more low end even compared to Kmart, but yet it still managed to thrive. Also, it's incorporated with Maxway, and I believe like another store or two. They kind of own them all. We also had a Best and Service Merchandise too before we got the Toys R Us.
Now I was going to ask you because I was talking to someone and they forgot about it. But do you remember when you could actually rent video games and movies at Rose's?
Oh wow!
Or was that just a thing at my Rose's? I don't know.
I remember mine selling used video games, and sometimes these used ones would even be brand new. I remember getting, it wasn't Rival Turf, but it was one of the sequels to it, something Brothers. It was in the Rival Turf for the Rushing Beat series. It was more the one-on-one fighter type game that was in that. And I remember picking that up there. I don't remember them having the rentals. Our Putt-Putt had rentals and our Farmore had rentals, but that might have just been maybe like a local Roses thing for you.
Yeah.
I remember, like I said, the used selection. I don't know where they got these used games from. I don't know if they were returns, if they bought them, because I don't remember there was a trade-in area. They were just used games, and they had Super NES games actually for quite a while after the Super NES was gone. Which was when I bought that one game was way after the Super NES.
Yeah, they would sell quote unquote used games that were still in the box with shrink wrap. Yeah, that was the weird thing. Because I remember I bought Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Edition on the NES, which I wish I still had it because that game's actually pretty uncommon now. But I remember I bought that, and that's also where I bought my first copy of Shaq Fu on the Super Nintendo. I bought that at Rose's.
Wow. Yeah, but Rose's was always an interesting store. But, that was some of the main places I remember getting toys, and we had this Toys R Us finally open. It was always a store you kind of heard about. A little bit more of a special occasion store, and I do see more and more people with the I was too poor to shop at Toys R Us, statuses and I don't know. Your parents probably told you they didn't have the money to shop there. But, I don't have a lot of toy memories from Toys R Us. Mine are mainly, honestly, game memories, because that was a big place to go to get games. I remember them having a lot of discounted Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom figures, and all they had was one of the kind of Arab guys. There was not very cool figures. There was maybe some Raiders of the Lost Ark. Actually, it was Raiders of the Lost Ark, because they did have the Nazi guy whose face melted, and they had that guy that Indy shot with the big scimitar sword. A couple toys once in a while, but most of the memories, man, like we've mentioned so many times before, that famous $20 game rack. It was still always fun. I was perfectly happy as a kid, honestly, being a window shopper. I knew what things were out of our means, so I didn't really ask for a whole lot, and I was usually cool just looking. I'm sure some Christmas birthday toys maybe came from there, and as I got older, I would pick out my own games and get those for birthday and Christmas, and the $20 rack was for, a good report card or something once in a while, which is not knocking it, because the $20 rack was, pretty awesome lots of times.
Yeah,
Blaster Master came from it, at least.
Yeah, I didn't really buy a whole lot of toys from Toys R Us. I bought more games there, and I did a lot more window shopping out of everything. I remember, actually, one of my fondest memories of Toys R Us, one is the smell. That smell, that plastic smell, will always be engraved in my mind. Even recently when I went in there, I was just like, man, that smell is still there. But the video game kiosks, man, that's my biggest memory, is seeing all the different kiosks. My favorite kiosk, and if I was to ever own a video game kiosk, would be the Game Boy kiosk, the one that was the big Game Boy that played Game Boy on the television screen.
Yeah,
that was dude, that was something cool. And then you had the other. it wasn't even really a console kiosk. It was more like a preview thing where it would have like a television screen, and you had all these different games that you would just push, and it would show you a preview of that game. And I would sit there for, I don't know, I'd sit there for like 15 minutes and just go back and watch videos, go back and watch. It's like, oh, WCW versus the World, in 64, and that's probably my biggest memory of it was the video game side, because the toys were just way too expensive. It was something that for me it was a very special occasion because it was a dedicated toy store. The only other time that I would actually look at toys is like if we went to Rose's or if we went to some department store that had a toy section, I'd run off and go and look at them. So it was a very special occasion that your parents would be like, we're going to an actual toy store. And it's crazy. We're not going to have that anymore.
No, and still, the little slips that you would take back to the counter to pick up your game.
Didn't that always feel so shady?
Yeah, it seemed kind of like a little bit normal at the time. Like it was kind of, at least you knew, like, man, if they got that slip, they have that game. So it was kind of like, at least you didn't have to go. I mean, sometimes you could still go ask to be like, hey, did some asshole like little James hide this his slip, for a game he wanted and couldn't get right then? And that's what I thought. I said, hey, I'll stick this behind, Renegade or something, and then it'll just be there when I come back, and I'll be able to get it. It is, and I still shopped at Toys R Us for. I actually hadn't been in since the decline was announced. I never ended up going back in there. The last system I remember getting from there was my Game Boy Advance. I got that at launch. We had a buddy that worked there, and he even called us because I think they came in like a day or so early, or either I don't know if it was the time of day, but something like he called us and told us. He's like, yeah, they're in, man. You guys come pick them up. And that was the last system I got there. I still would buy, still one of the better places for certain, any of the figure lines with like monsters, some of the NECA stuff. You really didn't see as many places. I thought they still had a little bit more adult select, because those were the toys a lot of adults bought. Yeah. And lots of times would be on sale. I still buy wrestling figures, and it was still a good place for Legos. Still a lot of things you could go in there, but I've been watching more and more videos of just like abandoned stores in general as this started to happen, and then as it closed, I've watched a lot of people just videotaping, going through the store, reminiscing where it was somebody bigger like a Pixel Dan from other people, just like smaller YouTube channels I found just through searching. And while I didn't go in there during its final days, I kind of got to experience it through other people's eyes, and you can really see what it meant to a lot of people. And as we see this decline of these just physical stores in general, it is just a little part of it's the way of the world, and part of it is still kind of sad, and a lot of it is bad business practices. A lot of very interesting videos on what actually caused it. Toys R Us had got bought out by like 4 other kind of companies, and they of course went in debt to buy Toys R Us. But you can just see it was too much debt this last Christmas. Apparently, they had announced the bankruptcy before Christmas, which really it really affected their sales, because it turns into trust. Like, is this company not going to be here? Can I return my toy? Will this gift card be worth something? 40 to 50% of their sales were from Christmas time, and this past Christmas they dropped considerably. I always remember Toys R Us. You go there during December, man, the parking lot was usually still full, but this one really hit them hard. It's very interesting. I've been watching more videos on just the decline of stores like Radio Shack, Toys R Us, and you can see at the end, it's not always just online or Amazon that killed them. Lots of times it was just a bad a business move, and some stores it just can't maintain it. But it was always a fun place to go, though.
Well, you did a good little segue there to our next topic before we take our break, and that is GameStop. Toys R Us is gone. I mean, you really think about it, man. Kids today will not know the joys of Toys R Us, Blockbuster, Discovery Zone, places like that, and soon possibly GameStop. because GameStop has kind of been hot water right now. Their stock has dropped like 31%, and they're talking about the fact that they're closing down over 100 different stores in the country. I believe it's like 138 different stores. It's not looking good. So I mean, what do you think about this? Do you think that GameStop's on its way out as well?
Okay, to me, I'd say 138 stores for GameStop doesn't even really seem like that many. That's the weird thing with GameStop when we talk about business practices. Like if you look at maps of areas of where Sean RGT did a video on this recently talking about it, and he did a map of his area, and you could see my area, Spring Lake, Fayetteville, Hope Mills. My God, there's maybe like 10. It all started, earlier on. We had a little bit more choice. We had some EBs, we had Babbage's, we had GameStop, we had Rhino, which Rhino was really awesome. And GameStop ended up buying all these. And, of course, they move into that location. You end up with just too many stores. I think they could change a lot of things. The closing some stores, combining them. Why not sell? I don't know if they still have that big, retro initiative anymore. Why not sell some of that stuff actually in these locations? I do enjoy the toys I've bought. I'd like to see more things like more of the NECA figures and things like that in there as maybe an alternative to Toys R Us. A change in the trade policies. You recently made a video on how you can really kind of get over with some good trade and things, as much as people accuse them of bad stuff, because sometimes they go in with old sports games and stuff that aren't worth anything. The one hand too, I'd like to see them change their policies as far as not giving people the same trade credit for just a disc as opposed to the whole game. Because you have a lot of people that want, if I'm going to buy a game, I'd rather go ahead and have the case and the cover. I don't want just, a disc. Sometimes I don't care. If I just want the game, that's all they have, okay. But to me, it should still be less. Don't give people the same amount of credit for just a disc as you would somebody with the case or, any kind of extras that come with it. And in turn, charge less for just a disc. A brand new, whatever, it's $50 and it's normally $60, but it's just a disc. Shit, man, I'm going to go ahead and pay the, the $60 and go ahead and get the cover. Why not? I think there's lots of things they could change. I don't think they're necessarily going to just fall under right away. I see a lot of people are like, good, they deserve it. I mean, I think of the people that work there, which, we already know, don't always have the best time. They catch a lot of shit from the corporate people. But maybe if they could change a lot of things, I think they could hang around, because they are one of the biggest game stores, and it could be a better experience for the workers. Of course, then too, with some closing, maybe we could see a little bit more of a rise of independent stores come up from the ashes, which maybe some of these employees, maybe that lose a job could end up getting a job over there. I don't think it's something that's going to completely fall to the wayside just yet. They try to take in more smartphones, and they try to adapt, but I don't always think they're adapting in the right ways. Like I say, have some more of this retro stuff, which is still so big. I mean, come on, carry that in your stores. It shouldn't have to be online where you don't know what you're getting. At least in that store, you can go in, physically see, hey, does this look fake? Does this look janky? Am I getting the right game? You could take it home and test it right away and see, and maybe they could test out things better along the way too. But just too many. There are too many GameStop stores. That's one of the biggest issues. I would think.
Yeah. There's definitely too many. I mean, there's 8 in my town. There's like 8 GameStops. And I don't know if they still take retro anymore. I feel like I watched like a CU podcast where Pat and Ian were talking about how they're kind of like disembolishing the whole retro trades because of the whole online thing, which honestly, I felt like if GameStop would have actually sold retro games in the store. Now, I will say some stores do sell retro in there, because I know our friend Jason, Black Metal Gamer, his GameStop actually had some retro games in there. But I feel like if we had more of that, I I think it would have been better for the retro community in the sense that it would have helped make the games more affordable because they would have been more accessible. So you would have had more casual gamers buying the games that they want from a corporate level and leaving that small community or that retro community to buy the games they really want. You know, because when you have a mixture of collectors and casuals, it starts to add like this crazy ecosystem. I think GameStop would have been a really great way to utilize that if they would have done it right, which obviously they didn't.
Yeah, with even maybe having, like dedicated just retro stores, have that store only do retro, have people that are into that hobby and can actually test these games on site, and make sure they run good. You'd have people that actually cared about the product, for sure working there, maybe have a mixture of, you could have your retro and more, toys in one location and have the other one focus on newer stuff with as many locations. I think it really could have worked for them, but once again, they went about it more, which they are a corporation, but they went about it with this corporate mentality, and they kind of ended up really getting screwed over with this mail-in, trade-in stuff, and I mean, I know you could trade in at some stores too, but they're originally supposed to have this, ultimate, white glove test of quality, which just didn't happen. It just didn't, leave it to some of the experts, the actual people that you could hire that could do that. And in turn, you could have like retro GameStop, and, you'd know in that one location in certain areas, you could go just to that store and you'd have I think a good loyal, customer base, but it just, they went about it the wrong way and it just kind of failed.
Yeah, I mean, I always said, too, it would have helped with the retro prices because a lot of the retro prices that we get for games are based off of eBay. And eBay is based off, price and demand. Where if GameStop was selling games at a corporate level, it'd be really hard for someone to be like, hey, do you want this copy of Super Mario Brothers 3 for $29? Be like, dude, GameStop's selling it for like $9.99 right now. We would naturally have to have adapt to the corporate level to get to that sort of leeway to make any sort of profit. So it could have actually lowered retro sales in the long run, and that would have made some collectors kind of upset because their games would have dropped value, but the people that just wanted to buy physical old games, it would have made them so much happier. But
I just think that, man, a location with that, whether it's classic cartridge game up through, PS2, GameCube, as it gets harder and harder, to find these. I still miss, Edward McKay where I'd go because they always, took in everything. You can't go into a GameStop and find PS2, GameCube. You could have all that in just one area. Even like DS games, I'd say, you can move a lot of those over there. And just have those dedicated stores. It could have been really cool, man, but you can see how things just kind of falter if you go about it the wrong way. Some people took it more of as a, GameStop greed, getting into the retro stuff, and, who knows what it was meant to be. I'm sure it was, meant to make money, but at the end, like, it obviously just didn't work out.
Exactly. And before we take our break, I do want to say that, once GameStop bought out ThinkGeek, that's when I knew there was some sort of issue. Like, when I started seeing that GameStop's focusing a lot on merchandise and T-shirts and trinkets and statues and those Funko Pop figures. When I started seeing that, that was my red flag when I saw that. I'm like, okay. Because, we got the rise of digital gaming, and as much as people don't want to accept it, there's a lot of people, including myself, that's become more of a digital gamer just for the convenience and price. It's definitely changing. Definitely.
Yeah, and, like I said, they're just still going to have to make adjustments. So we'll just see. I think they're still going to hang around for a while, but they're definitely going to have to make changes.
Indeed. Now, what we're going to do, guys, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back to celebrate the 4th of July, we're going to be talking about some badass Americanized games. Not necessarily games made in America, but games that you play that just make you feel like an American badass, like the Undertaker.
Yeah.
going down the ring with your Harley. Anyway, guys, sit back, relax, and we'll be right back. And we are back, guys. And before we get into the main topic of the episode with the 4th of July and talking about badass Americanized games, I did want to give a big shout out to my friend Jeffrey Wittenhagen from Hagen Alley's Books. He has a new book that's coming out. It's on Kickstarter right now into the 15th of July. And it's a book on hidden gems. And it's spanning from just about every console you can possibly think of. And I'm going to have a link on the description of this episode to his Kickstarter. Definitely check it out. Definitely support it. I'm actually writing an article for it. I'm doing a Hidden Gems on the PlayStation 1, Silhouette Mirage. I'm doing a review on that. I've worked with him a couple times. I did one for the NES Memories book that he did recently that was really, really good. So yeah, definitely check that out. But anyway, 4th of July, badass American games. Now, when you think of badass American games, James, what do you think of? Like, what's that one game?
You think of that time of year, and for me, some of the things you think of, like movies and action. And for me, one of the biggest ones always as a kid, growing up during that Rambo and Schwarzenegger time, which is a perfect combo of all those, along with Aliens, would be Contra.
Yes. That was mine. That was going to be totally mine as Contra. I don't know. It's like, it's funny because Contra, of course, was made by Konami, a Japanese company. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the Japanese companies did so much of a great parody of like what the Americanized action movie genre was, and it transpired and translated so well into video games that Contra is like just one of those games that's like a mixture of, if we had a really good Predator / Rambo game, it would be Contra. It's so good.
Yeah, it's one without bearing, either of the licenses. I mean, as you've seen in time, and I believe the cover, I think both of the pictures are actually from Arnold. I know it was always rumored one was Stallone, but I think both of the body shots and poses are actually Schwarzenegger movies. But it still gave you that feel, at times when, Predator was a horrible game. At the same time, it was a movie we all loved. This really felt, like it drops you down in the jungle. You're battering aliens. You get the mixture of that, just the blowing everything up and killing everybody in sight. It just was like an epitome of that fun action game for that time.
Yeah, a lot of the enemies would favor, xenomorphs and Predator and just all these other sort of monsters that were from all the action movies. And it was just a really, really good game, great soundtrack. And I know I made a video recently, and I was talking about how console ports that beat the arcade, and the NES port to Contra is still like my favorite compared to the arcade. I had the arcade version of Contra, and every time I play it, just feels like something's off.
You know what it is to me is when I played it as a kid for the first time, it felt like the characters were too tall.
Yeah.
And it just kind of threw off the whole game. Like, to have that on the port and play it first and to see it in the arcade, it's like, oh, like Contra, like I bet this is so great. And you play it and it's just kind of disappointing. But sometimes it's what you grew up on with, you know, and what you're used to.
Yeah, and of course, after Contra, you had other run and gun series that spawned like Metal Slug. Metal Slug is like it. What I like about Metal Slug is it mixes Contra, but it also mixes a lot of the wartime movies. Like I could see a lot of influences of like Platoon and stuff like that with the soldiers. And I always called the hostages. They always made me think of Tom Hanks from Castaway. I was like, oh, I gotta go and save Tom Hanks.
Yeah, they definitely added a level of humor that we didn't really have before. All the characters you could say really had, character. Just the way they would act, the looks in their faces, so much more animated. In a sense, it was almost a bit more realistic, compared to the nameless, faceless people that were in games like Contra, having the better graphics. Another one for me at that time, which I'm a fan of the arcade and the NES port was POW. Once again with the wartime movies and a very real fact, that we had prisoners of war. As you learn, as you get older, we definitely had people that were, never found, never brought back home. And this game had some guys busting out of a prison and just fighting their way out. Lots of grenades and bombs. And on the same side with that, as we're kind of talking about movies a little bit too, I'd really recommend one I saw a couple years ago for the first time called The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. It's a very long, almost 3-hour movie of guys just in a Nazi prison camp in World War II, and they're escaping out. And I mean, it's just a really awesome movie. And they actually made a game version, which I have. I purchased it not too long ago, and I'm sure it's pretty terrible. I haven't played it yet, but it was around the PS2 Xbox era. Kind of funny how they would even go back to classic movies like that. But I mean, that's definitely probably a good movie to check out. It's very fun and exciting.
Yeah, and you mentioned like Nazis. That was like one of the biggest. If it wasn't aliens, like we were pretty much battling either aliens, punks, or Nazis,
and communists too. Don't forget communists.
Because I mean, like another game that really sticks out of my mind is Bionic Commando and Wolfenstein. Where like the bosses were actually Hitler, or even Total Carnage. Like Total Carnage, you were battling Saddam Hussein. It was insane that we were battling all these like modern, like realistic, like political figures that mixed well with video games, and it was really interesting. And I think about it, when I was thinking about the topic, and I'm like, man, it's so crazy how much, American history has influenced video games and some sort of entertainment like that.
Yeah, I mean, I give a shout out too, once again, a little bit harkening back to the old days of, we mentioned before with Rambo, and he did not have that great of a game early on. Finally got his just due, I think, within the past decade with the arcade game where you would have the gun you could actually shoot on a big screen, which, we had some older games like that, like Operation Wolf, Cabal. Yeah. That was a game that kind of put you in the heat of the action, where you actually got to hold on to the gun. It had the kickback on it and everything as you just mowed down hordes of people. And with the history, like you mentioned, of course, we get to see that in games that are popular to this day, as far as like, Call of Duty. So many first-person shooters, are based in different time periods of war, whether it's going back to, I had a Civil War game on the 360, and they, can go back up into current times. And that's one that you can see is, there was an article in one of the Gamestop's magazine, Game Informer, and it actually had like a list of, it was talking about the military and, games that they played. And you'd think a lot of the guys in the military, like, yep, they play Call of Duty,
Oh, yeah. And I mean, like some of those campaigns on some of those first-person shooters, I know a lot of people when they talk about first-person shooters, they think of online. And that is a big, like, meat and potatoes of first-person shooters is the online community. But some of those campaigns were just really something else. What I think of, it's like the Medal of Honor series. That was like such a good game, like on the PlayStation 1. And I remember playing that. I remember playing, the original Wolfenstein. When they started like mixing modern events with sci-fi, like you weren't just having Nazis, you were having zombie Nazis, or like alien Nazis or something like that. It was always a lot of fun. That was always good times.
And along those lines, I always kind of enjoyed Soldier of Fortune on the Dreamcast, just because it was kind of ridiculous. It was your first-person one, but you could just completely mutilate people with a knife.
Yeah,
which was just, it was really ridiculous, and that kind of fell way to, what was it? I think it was like Rogue. It was Richard Marchenko. He was an ex-Navy SEAL, wrote a very popular line of books. I've read quite a few, and he actually had a game with him in it that I remember hearing was just hilarious, just due to him talking and apparently like cussing a whole lot. And, you know, with that same line of games, the first persons, as later on as it went, I mean, you know, Duke Nukem. He was one of the, you know, most just biggest parodies of your total action hero, smart-ass type guy, just destroying aliens, looking at boobs and saving the world, you know?
Yeah, that was a really good one. And then you had the more realistic, almost like dramas, like Metal Gear Solid. Man, I mean, I will admit, Hideo Kojima's like went completely like bat crazy with the Metal Gear series about, you know, the artistic flair of it. But if you play like the first two Metal Gear Solids, like Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, it's really interesting how he took real events and turned it around into this drama with sci-fi and science fiction. And like some of it like really just kind of, like if you had a couple of beers and you were playing Metal Gear Solid, some of it would actually really make you have those like philosophical thoughts. You're like, oh man, freaking genome genes and cloning and all that stuff. You start really thinking about it. But I really love the fact that with his writing on those games, and lately I've been wanting to, but I haven't. But I've been wanting to go back and play Metal Gear Solid 2 because that was a game I played a lot, and I've kind of forgot some of it over the years. I want to go back and relive it.
It's a series I wouldn't mind actually playing. I'm sure that sounds weird to some. I watched my brother EJ play quite a bit of the series over time because he was always very big into those. But it's just one, you know, I never really played many Metal Gears past the ones on NES. I do have one of the newer ones that was on PS3 that was always more of an action game. Can't think of what the title of that one was.
The Metal Gear Rising? Was it that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's very, very different, but very good.
But it's one I wouldn't mind, you know, going to. And I'm also a big fan of just, you know, periods of time in America where you have something a little bit more serious like L.A. Noire.
Mm-hmm.
I like its setting, you know, how they have the dress, the cars, everything is kind of just set back in a past time into a little bit more hokey things like Destroy All Humans, where you have that, you know, Americana 1950s, dad goes to work, mom raises the kids. You know, people really look down upon that now, and that's still a lifestyle that works, you know, for some, but times have changed, but that's really the way things were. And to see it, you know, with these alien invasions, the G-men, you know, threat of, you know, nuclear war, which were, you know, real scares at the time. And
yeah.
I think with Destroy All Humans, as silly as it can be, you still have like a level of realism with that. And I love the Mafia games too. Just that, you know, you really do get to go back in time, like I said, with the dress, the music, these old-ass cars. I love seeing that. And I'm still a fan of how cars looked, you know, in the olden times compared to now. I've always been surprised, like, we don't see more of a resurgence of just that old style, because it's very popular, you know, for people to have their car clubs and fix up these old cars that just look amazing. And it's like, man, why don't they make newer cars that look like that?
Yeah, and when you were talking about Destroy All Humans, it made me think of another Americana sort of game that was also on the Xbox, and that was like Stubbs the Zombie. You know, it just had, you know, that real I Love Lucy kind of, you know, honeymooners feel to it. It's like, come on, Billy, let's play some baseball. You know?
Yeah.
Loved it.
That was just like the life back then, and it's done in a very humorous way.
Yeah.
But it, like I said, it still has lots of tones of, you know, realism to it. And I'd be hard-pressed to forget a early PS2 game with this time of year called Fantavision.
Oh, I'm not familiar with Fantavision.
No, Fantavision was kind of a, you know, like a puzzle game with fireworks.
Yes, that's right. Okay.
I think it was one of the first PS2 games,
yeah,
actually.
It was.
I mean, you can get it for like, you know, $2 now, I think.
I never played it, but I remember seeing it so many times, and I'm like, you know, maybe I should pick this up, you know, but I just never did. Might be something I go back to. Maybe I would try to find like a cheap copy and actually try it out, because Yeah, I remember seeing that Phantom Vision.
It's definitely around, and one of the games I'll talk about now is one of the ones I've been playing, not that much. I just tried it out before the show, but the American Dream on PSVR, and it's also for the the other VR systems too. But what it is, it's kind of a take on that old 50s life, and but everything is done with guns. Even as a baby, you have your guns. When you want your mom, you shoot the door. Mom's giving you your food on the tip of a fucking gun that you got to move your head towards it. I don't know if it's some kind of political take on the. It's very humorous. I understand how the times are. I'm not necessarily fully pro-gun. I'm also not fully anti-gun. I understand, there's issues. But we're not going to get into any kind of political crap on here. But it's just a very humorous game. And, with it just... I'm sitting there hitting a button and a clip flies up and I'm a baby in a crib and I'm loading the clip up. I'm shooting for mom. But it's a whole take on life. But guns are used for everything. Dad's carving the turkey. You shoot the light off at night.
Oh my God!
It's I take it for what it is, and it seems like a very cool light gun game to me. And I was really having I wanted to try it out before the show because I thought it would be a fitting game to talk about. I was like, I gotta play this real quick, and I played it very briefly just to take it off because I can get sucked into the VR very easily, But I thought it was so fitting,
Indeed. Now, because we're running short on time, what was I want to let you mention another American game that you wanted to talk about, and then we can go into games we've been playing recently. So what's another one you wanted to brief on?
I mean, to throw out just another classic one, I'd have to throw out like some Bad Dudes.
Yeah.
That just another epitome. We go back to that, 80s action movie, Ninjas. Ninjas, though they're Japanese, of course, were very big, but we did have American Ninja. We had that movie. Just fun. You got to rescue the president, and you fight ninjas and bad guys, and then you go out for hamburgers at the end. And I mean, if that doesn't say America, I don't really know what does.
Indeed. Now, games we've been playing recently, you were mentioning VR, and I still haven't played VR yet, so I wanted to throw the mic towards you, James, and give you a moment to gush about VR, because I feel like you've had kind of like a spiritual awakening with this peripheral of video games.
I did. I had very briefly the last time, and I've actually got to play it more. It's once again not one I play every day, but I have managed to get sucked into it for multiple hours. I've been finding more light gun games, which we all know I love, and I never really thought of the VR as a modern day light gun system. But the PS3, it had the camera, the move, and you had some light gun games, and it kind of takes the function, just steps it up. One game I played, Operation Warcade. I can kind of tell you it's a kind of a take on Operation Wolf, except you're more inside the game. I really get kind of surprised at how well the VR works. At the time last year I was deciding between the Switch and the VR, and I asked Ryan because he had both, and he said get Switch, and that was the right choice. But as the VR has gotten cheaper in price, it's way more accessible. At the time it was like $500. It was the cost of a system. Now you can get it for like half that, and man, it really just takes you way to another place. The Operation Warcade was just soup, man. It's just like you're inside. Everything is all around you. It just really takes you, like away. I like to be able to know there's nothing going on, because it is a little bit of a process. You got to get your head set and plug it in, and I try to keep that to the side because I've heard the cable, sometimes if they get tangled, it can mess it up. And I am a mess of cables and cords, and I decided to take a little bit more care with the VR headset. So you got to set up your Move controllers, and once in a while that's a little bit of a pain. Sometimes you got to plug one in, but once you get in there, man, it really does take you away. Lethal VR was the one that I sat and played for a few hours. just straight up target game. Kind of reminds me of Reload that was on the Wii. Was just a awesome game. But I mean, you got your targets popping up. Sometimes there's you got to pick between the good guy and the bad guy. Kind of a throwback to Hogan's Alley. The weapons they give you. Sometimes it's knives. Some targets you can only shoot with knives. Some with guns. Then they start bringing out crazy weapons like a razor-brimmed hat, like Odd Job from James Bond, and you're lobbing off statue heads. It really, like I said, man, it really does kind of take you away. I think if anybody's kind of been debating it, you're curious about it, I think you would actually like it. There's a damn good chunk of games that are not that expensive, and a lot on PSN. Most of them are around like $20, and the ones I've played, I've really got my money's worth. I haven't delved into the horror games too much. I've been playing The Inpatient a bit more, which is in the Until Dawn series, and it has definitely made me jump and yell a bit. I haven't braved Resident Evil yet, which I'm sure that's just going to be like pretty, intense. But I mean, it's just something like just to be able to turn your head around and stuff is still behind you, It really does take you away, and I mean, I've been really impressed with it, and I hope it stays around. With it being cheaper, maybe more people will get it. Resident Evil is kind of one of the top tier like AAA games, which I don't really know how many people are going to do full versions of their games in VR. We just have to see. But honestly, the stuff I haven't played, I really enjoy it. I did a shark diving cage, where a shark was swimming around and ripped the door off. And
oh wow!
Even though it's fake, you're kind of backing up. I knocked a drink over one time. I was throwing some knives in the one game. A lot of games you can't play sitting down, just chilling, but you do want to have like a little bit of a clear area just in case.
You want to have you want to have a safe zone.
Yeah, I mean, you can really get into it, and you really do get, kind of like lost within it and just kind of forget where your outer surroundings are as far as them picking up the move controllers as guns. I mean, it really feels like something's in your hand, has the little triggers on the back of them, and it just, man, I mean, it's like the ultimate, like, especially if you're a fan of light gun games, I found, like I said, the Lethal VR, Operation Warcade, the American Dream is along that line, and Blood Rush, which is the other Until Dawn game. That one's pretty much a roller coaster ride and a light gun game. So I mean, it for me, it's really been like the ultimate light gun game experience. That, as a big a fan of those that I am, it's kind of been worth it just for those, because I've never played one where I really felt like I was that in the game. So I mean, it's been really impressive. I mean, I don't really necessarily think it's the the future of gaming, but I mean, it definitely has its place.
Yeah.
Like I said, the headset's comfortable. You can wear glasses with it. There's not really any kind of restrictions, even with like some of my eye troubles I've had. None of that has affected anything. It does feel like crap is kind of just floating in front of you sometimes. It's way better than like a 3D movie. I would give it that for sure. And even Hulu, they have special programs that are in 3D. YouTube does as well. You can go on roller coaster rides that are, real roller coasters. There's really lots of interesting things I haven't even fully, experimented with. But every time I play it, man, it just one of the games just kind of makes you smile when you do something in it. Kind of like if you beat like a big boss, you feel really in tune with the game. That's how you feel in the VR, because you really kind of are in the game, and it's just a little bit more of a satisfying experience. But I mean, it's just been fucking awesome, really.
Indeed. Yeah, I eventually I want to try it out. It's been long enough. I definitely want to give it a try. Now, with games I've been playing recently, it's kind of a short list. I say that, but last night, man, I don't know what got over me, but last night I got like on a Retro Pie binge, and I mean, I was playing. At first, it started out I was playing like Shinobi. I think I was just on a ninja kick last night because I was playing Shinobi, and then I got Ninja Warriors to work on the arcade. So I started playing Ninja Warriors arcade.
Is that the kind of Muppet looking one?
No,
I'm thinking of Ninja Kids. Never mind, that's a different one.
No, Ninja Warriors is the one where it's like when it was at the arcade, it actually used the 3 monitors, like it was the super wide arcade cabinet.
Yeah.
And you played as a female ninja, and if you got hit too many times, she turned out she was a cyborg. Like you started seeing her like robotic arms and robotic chest with gold bra and all that shit. But she looked like freaking Madonna. But I would start playing that, and then I realized, I never knew this, that Ninja Spirit had an arcade port. I always thought Ninja Spirit was just a game on the TurboGrafx, and I really liked that game, and I never knew it was also on arcade, so I found the arcade ROM, and I put that on the Pi, and oh my gosh, it is so good.
There's a couple, I was surprised Bloody Wolf actually had an arcade port as well.
Oh, wow.
Which is another one I'd recommend. It's different. I'm not really sure which one I like better, but I did really enjoy the arcade version. It has its differences. But yeah, I mean, like there's so many games we just never knew had an arcade version. It's weird.
Yeah, and then I did beat Owlboy, and oh my gosh, right now I don't know if it's still on sale. But if you guys are listening and it's still on sale on the eShop.
It is still on sale. I just checked. It's on sale.
Okay. Yeah, because it's on the eShop for $17 right now, and I cannot stress enough to buy this game. It is so good. See, this is what I was kind of explaining to some of my friends. Like, the whole retro indie thing is nothing new. Like, most indie titles that come out and had that retro look, it's like, oh, it's like a new game, but it's like a retro look, where Owlboy feels like an actual retro game. Like it feels like a game that was found, that's been lost for the past 25 years. And at first I was trying to determine like what kind of retro game it is, like what console it would be on. I'm like, well, it definitely has that Super Nintendo look because the sprites are very detailed, it's very colorful, but the soundtrack's very, big, and it's very modernized. It has actual like, orchestra sound to it. So I've come to the conclusion that Owlboy would have been a launch title if we actually did have the Super Nintendo Sony console. Like if that actually was a thing, like if Sony and Nintendo actually got along and made that CD add-on for the Super Nintendo, Owlboy would have been one of those games because it has got the graphic style of Super Nintendo, maybe a little bit more enhanced, but it's got that crazy realistic soundtrack using a real orchestra that I could see them putting on like a CD format. So like it's just an amazing game. It is so good, and it's not really that long of a game. I mean, you could beat it in like 10 hours. It took me a while just because it was like my palate cleanser after all the games I've been reviewing lately. I would just go back and play a little bit of Owlboy, beat a couple things, then put it down and pick it back up. And finally, when I finished it, I was like, all right, well, this is one of those like summertime memories right here. This is one of those games I'll remember. Like, oh, that summer I went and I played Owlboy and beat it. It was so fun.
Yeah, I haven't played the most of that one, but I remember I'd got that one like earlier on, and man, I really did love it. So like I said, for that price, it's regular $25.
Yeah. So
you're saving a good $7 off of it, and I mean it really is one of the ones that's worth it. It's not just lower indie graphics because that's all they can do. It's ones that look really good and stand out, and I mean it's just an awesome game.
Yeah, I feel like it's retro for the sake of art and love instead of just what's trendy, because a lot of indie games that come out that look, like you call the crap, what is it, the crappy graphic games?
Yeah.
Like when those come out, like, they're just making it retro just because of nostalgia and just because, retro is in. So they're like, we'll just make this roguelike retro game. I mean, there's so many roguelike indies out there. It's just insane. Like either a lot of indie games are either roguelikes or Metroidvanias. I'm like, dude, just give me some nice stage-based platforming fun.
Yeah, and I'd throw a little bit of one you told me was good, and I'd been playing more too, was the Fox and Forests.
Yeah,
another really good one that's I think up there, with Owlboy as far as that style of game. Just really beautiful, fun, good mechanics. It's games like these we kind of wish we had back in the day, because I mean they would have definitely been like top seller games we're talking about now. I think if they had come out then.
Yeah, Owlboy would have been one of those like definite hidden gems, kind of like my friend Jeffrey Wittenhagen's book that he has on Kickstarter right now. Just had to throw that little plug in there. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much how my games have been. I mean, I've done a couple of reviews like Pro Nocturnal or Pro Nautical Activity. I did a review on that. It was actually not a really, it wasn't a good game. It was probably one of the first reviews I actually gave like a really low score to. But I did a review of that. Also did a review of, or I'm about to do a review of a game on from NIS of America. And it's like Jinsu the Wanderer or something like that. I'm trying to remember the name. Doesn't really sound too convincing, the fact I can't remember the name right now. That sounds terrible on my part. But yeah, it's like Ginsu the Wanderer. It's a roguelike, top-down, anime style dungeon crawler. I can't really talk about it too much because the embargo's still up. But I'm working on my video, which should be out on July 10th because that's when the embargo's lifted. So I mean that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I've been playing a lot of retro. Finally beat Owlboy. Been playing a little bit of Street Fighter on the Switch, the 30th anniversary at Pachinko World when the days are slow. But that's it. Well, what about you, James, other than being immersed in VR?
Along with that, I mean, I have been delving into some Dirty Harry movies over the past few days. An American icon himself, of course. Just been very fun. I haven't seen all of them. I saw a few, and I got like a box set, and it's kind of inspired a bit by I saw the Angry Video Game Nerd episode on the Dirty Harry game, which I actually was a fan of as a kid. I could never really get anywhere, but I liked it. I mean, it's kind of rough when you play it now. It was that time, like some dirty. We actually had, Dirty Harry the Deadpool came out in 1988, 89, because they had like Welcome to the Jungle on the soundtrack. But this game kind of encompassed a lot of plots and points from some of them, and I mean it's a fun series. I'm kind of trying to go back and see some older 60s and 70s kind of like crime action movies that I might have missed out on, but I just finished the third one, and I did find out too, just upon looking up things on it, there was actually because I said, man, I wonder why we never had like a Dirty Harry game later on, because we saw so many other old properties, come back over time, and Starsky and Hutch, and you'd get things like that, and there actually was a game planned in 2007 for the Xbox and PS2. Clint Eastwood was on board, was going to do voicing for it, and then it just kind of fell out, and we never got it. So for right now, all we have is the Dirty Harry NES game and the movie series, and I would say just stick with the movie series. That'd be a good 4th of July marathon right there for you.
Indeed. And this is going to wrap up another episode. And, yeah, happy 4th of July. I also do want to say happy Canada Day, too, to some of our Canadian listeners, because Canada Day just passed. I believe it was either today or yesterday from recording. I can't remember. I just saw it on Facebook. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's their day, too. But definitely hope you guys have a very safe holiday. And stay really, really cool because it's already hot outside. I went outside during our break, and I'm like, God, man, this humidity's killing me. I'm ready for fall and winter. I'm ready for pumpkin spice everything.
It's a ways off, though.
I know. But anyway, guys, if you enjoyed listening to this, be sure to check out my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Xander Skullion, in case you're checking us out on Podomac on iTunes. And while you're at it, leave us a review. Rate the show. Really helps us expand and find new listeners and just get a bigger community that you can also join on Facebook, facebook.com/group/XSGaming podcast. You can join our Facebook group community. And yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. So anyway, guys, as always, thanks for listening, and as always, happy gaming.
Go ahead, make my day, and have a pleasant evening and 4th of July, everybody.